wherever I go now, that I can see that each step of the way that he has been faithful, even though I've been thrown off by not seeing not seeing what he was doing in that moment, because I was just so scared that I wasn't, that something was going to go wrong and something else was going to go wrong and it wasn't going to work, but he was faithful.
And even seeing that he gave us the strength we needed through each part. The amount of times I know that was not my strength, because I was done. There was done, and I went so far beyond it. And every time to think the Lord brought me through it. And then even after we had some complications healing after the surgery as well, and I was in pain for months and months, and the Lord still somehow every single day I got up.
Welcome to this episode of the His Hill podcast. It's great to have you with us. I have family with me today, and I'm excited to be able to do this. They live in another hemisphere, and we happen to be together in the same place at the same time. They're home in Canada visiting, and we're in Canada visiting. And so I asked if they would be willing to sit down. They listened to the podcast, and they said they would be, and I was just really excited. But I have our Marlene and my nephew, Jared Loewen, and his wife, Yuané, and they live in New Zealand. They're here, like I said, in Canada visiting, and we're sitting in the basement of their home and of their parents' home and just having a visit. So, guys, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Okay, now, of course, you guys being alumni, and we'll get to all of that. You're alumni of His Hill, and you met there. But, you had talk about different childhoods, because you come from completely different areas of the world. Let's get an idea. Let the listener have a little bit of background of where you come from, what the Lord's been doing in your life. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, so Jared will go first. Okay, Jared, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you grew up and what your family life background is like.
Well, I grew up here in Canada, so we're from Abbotsford, BC. So I grew up in a really loving Christian home. I think I came to know the Lord when I was probably 5, so at least as far as I can remember. And I was really blessed. I mean, both having amazing parents and have 3 siblings and an older brother, and younger sister. And we always got along really well and have really, really positive memories of my childhood. And when I came to know the Lord when I was 5, I always remembered that. I actually remember it. A lot of people sometimes don't when you're that young, but I have a memory of that day, and I think we were with some family friends, and I remember we were jumping on the trampoline right after my mom and dad had brought us aside, and we'd accepted, me and my older brother accepted Christ into our life. And I remember jumping on the trampoline with our friends a little while later that day and just telling them all about it and being really excited. And they didn't really have not much of a response for me, but no, I was really, really ecstatic and excited. And throughout most of my childhood, I don't have any other really crazy things that happened. I mean, praise the Lord, I have a really blessed childhood. So it's, my testimony is, I guess, relatively short in that way, and I thank the Lord a lot for that. I think probably as I was growing up, maybe one piece of information I could share is we were homeschooled. We went to public school for the first couple of years, I think, until I was maybe 7. And then from there on, my mom homeschooled my three of my siblings, so me, my older brother, and my younger sister at the time, because my little brother came a little bit later on. And so we were all pretty close, and we grew up together in that way. And so my mom learned to homeschool us all, and we really enjoyed that. And we did that for, I think, 7 or 8 years until I was in grade 10. So then I spent the last 3 years in a private Christian high school. Yeah. Which was really great. So after high school, probably like a lot of people, sort of during the high school days and a little bit after high school, I sort of went through a little bit of, I guess, a rebellious time. Nothing crazy nothing crazy, but I think I just made some decisions that I probably look back and think that was pretty stupid. And just kind of a time where I was not walking away from the Lord, but he wasn't really forefront of mind. He wasn't really prioritized for me. He wasn't my life at that stage, and my priorities were kind of just with my friends, and they were just sort of with. I was sort of being taken with the world and the earthly pleasures that come with that, and I think that was sort of taking my focus off the Lord. And for most of my younger teenagehood, I guess I was always seeking after the Lord, at least for as far as I can remember, and that was it started to change a little bit as I got a little bit older. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I probably just didn't really. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about I guess I was looking to see what else there was outside of what I had grown up with, I guess.
Trying to identify with something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's where I was probably struggling to find my identity in something that wasn't actually true of me.
Yeah.
So I went through that for a little bit, but yeah, I probably won't.
What about, I know sports was a big thing for you.
Yeah.
Was that part of it, just trying to find an identity?
Yeah, I think so. That's probably part of it. Because I grew up, I played ice hockey and I played baseball growing up as well, and I certainly did find a lot of. I guess I probably did find a lot of my identity in sports and how I performed and stuff like that as well. I mean that's I think that's part of the whole thing where I was not even just thinking of how I was using that, maybe not using my my gifts for the Lord or for His glory, but rather sort of using it for, I guess, my own glory and my own sort of how that made me feel, I guess. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so we'll stop for a second right there, and then let's hear from Yuané a little bit, and we'll get you guys kind of close to the same time frame, and then hear what's going on with you as a couple. Okay, so Yuané, tell us about first. Let's start with where were you born?
I was born in South Africa, and we moved over to New Zealand when I was about 6.
And what was the reason for that?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have heard recently about some of the, I guess, genocide or attacks that happen in South Africa, and unfortunately my family was among the many that have been impacted by it. My parents, there was an attack planned on them, and so they found out, I mean, I was very little, so it's just what I've been told, but they found out that there had been an attack planned on them, and one of the workers ran away, and so they were able to, I think, warn my parents in time, and after that, my dad said, that's enough, it's time for us to go.
You said something to me last night that I had not heard from you before, but that your father had to teach you how to hide.
Yes, yeah.
Just as precaution measure.
That's what, I think that was an eye-opening point for them. I mean, they've lived with the danger their whole lives, but the moment when they had to teach me and my brother how to hide in the grass so that if anything were to happen to Mum and Dad, that no one would find you, that was, I think, a different scary moment for them. And I mean, my grandparents and my auntie and uncle and my cousins, who were one at the time, they had actually been in an attack, which was very very bad. They survived it, thankfully, but yeah, it was a very, very traumatic time for them.
Sure.
They were in 2 attacks actually.
So
my dad was able to bring a lot of our family over as well.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Yeah, so
you moved to New Zealand. And about what year was that?
2008.
Okay. Okay, so you moved to New Zealand.
Yes.
And it was your family at first.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about that.
Yeah. So my dad was a dairy farmer. In South Africa, he was a stock and beef and corn and farmer in general. And then he got a dairy farming job. And he worked really, really hard. The first few years were quite difficult, but he worked his way up and he became manager.
Now, did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay.
So my whole family, as far as great grandparents, they're all Christians as far as we know. South Africa is very much a Christian culture as well. But my grandma especially, she's very, very zealous for the Lord. I think she would make sure that if there was someone wandering, that they would come back. But yes.
By will or by force.
Yeah. But yeah, so my parents both knew the Lord and brought us up in that. We weren't actually able to go to church very often because my dad was a dairy farmer, so he had to milk in the mornings, which unfortunately the cows don't stop.
Right. They don't go to church.
Yeah, they don't go to church, no. But usually on like a Wednesday evening, they had a lot of the other farmers around, and they had like a Bible study.
Oh, wow.
Which that was good. So we were always, I guess, surrounded by that. And then probably when I think I became a Christian when I was, I think around 5. I don't
really?
remember.
So before you moved.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's what my parents tell me. I don't.
Okay.
I just have known the Lord, I guess, my whole life.
Okay.
But I would probably say when I was 14 is when I made a more conscious decision to make him my life, because I started noticing, I was in public school, and I started noticing there was a very big difference between the life I wanted to live and the life that they were living. So yeah, I made a choice and said I don't want to go down the road that they're all going down, and it's not, I can see it's not fulfilling. They're all just, it's dark.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I didn't want to do that, and we actually soon thereafter moved to the South Island, where I met Dale and Patty Epp.
Yeah. Dale and Patty, who are they are Torchbearers. They used to be, and Dale was the director of the Torchbearer Center that we used to have in the South Island in New Zealand, and now he runs a summer camp program that's in New Zealand as well as in Australia and Tasmania, and I think there's another country that's starting to develop. Anyway, they're still associated with Torchbearers through Wangabrai in Australia. So just let people know who you're talking about.
Yes,
there. So you got to, your family got to be good friends with them.
Yeah, and that was probably a big part in, I guess, me moving closer to the Lord and, just making my faith my own. And I went to one of those camps, and I think that's where my eyes were kind of opened in a different way than before. I started realizing, it's not just an adult faith sort of thing, because a lot of the time it had been my parents' faith that I had just been a part of sort of thing. It felt more like, and then I realized, there are kids here, they have a faith like with the Lord and or a relationship with the Lord, and I can too, and it was really, I enjoyed it a lot, and since then I think and then soon thereafter I went to the Hill.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that now. So, growing up in New Zealand, I can see this as being a kind of a different thing for the two of you. You know, Jared, growing up here in southern British Columbia, it's known as part of the Bible Belt for Canada, and I would guess that, is there even a part of New Zealand that's considered as a Bible Belt?
No, I went to a lot of different schools. I think I went to maybe 4 or 5 different schools, and I knew maybe 5 Christians.
Okay.
Like 800 kids, some 200 kids, like each school was a different size, and I knew maybe 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very, very different, very atheist that I grew up with. Yeah.
Okay. And not that, I think it's interesting. We think that because we grow up in a Bible Belt, well, that makes it easier, right?
Yeah.
But I think in a more disguised way or a subtle way, in some ways it can probably be more difficult because we can become very comfortable just going to church, going to youth group, being with other people who say they're Christians, but there's no real seriousness about it.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've especially noticed, having now seen both sides to it, where I've lived here for most of my life in BC, and then and now the last few years living in New Zealand. It's been a different Yeah, it's sort of given me a different perspective on how I grew up and the people here. It does seem like the culture in North America in general is more so, it's more difficult to find the real genuine Christians who are actually treating Christ as their first priority, as their life, where it's sort of everyone is more in the same sort of lukewarm state, where that's sort of Christ is a part of my life, but he is not my life. It's just he's just something. He's one of the things. He's part of sports. He's part of family. He's just a little bit. He's just a piece there, but he's not the whole thing. And I think that's been pretty evident as I've come to New Zealand, and there's very few Christians. That's been something that, as I've seen it, it's a lot easier to actually identify the true believers who are really focused on Christ, and they really want everyone to see that as well. It's not because I think it's really foreign to say to somebody in New Zealand that you are a Christian. They almost don't even know what you're talking. Yeah,
you
they
stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, yeah. It's completely foreign to them, and I've had a few conversations with people that you really have to start in the beginning, like absolutely ground level, because there's no foundational knowledge on what Christianity really actually is. They just sort of know the stereotypes, and you sort of need to. They often have questions regarding certain stereotypes about Christians, and you sort of have to kind of go back a little bit further and actually give them an understanding of what do we actually believe. And but I think that's actually been something that's really has been profitable for me to be able to practice working on just, I guess, how to express my faith, especially to somebody who has not much of a background or an understanding about who Jesus is and what Christians believe. I think that's been something it's been really good for my walk with the Lord, I feel like, because that's it's allowed me to really have to think about, why do I believe this? And I've really had to dig into scripture in certain parts of where I thought I knew the answers to their questions, but they would always bring up more questions. I thought, well, that's a good point. I need to figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, we tend to think that that being in a situation where there's more of atheistic type domination would be more difficult than being in an area that's considered, you know, saturated with Christians.
Yeah.
But really, it's not. It's different.
Yeah.
Not necessarily any easier, any harder, but
that's right.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so you both ended up coming to His Hill. So how did that happen? Jared, you've got the mic, so why don't you go first? Tell us, how did you end up going to His Hill?
So, it's funny. You actually played a very big part in that, Uncle Kelly, because you're my uncle, and I've grown up around you and the family, and so I've always known about His Hill, and that was always something that was sort of, I guess, in the not towards the front of my mind. Certainly, I think it was much further towards the back of my mind, but it was just something I knew as it was sort of an option of something I could do after high school, although I didn't really ever have any intention on doing that.
Yeah.
Out of high school, I decided to go into university, and I had a part-time job at a coffee shop, so that's what I started off doing. And I think I did that for 2 years, and during that time, that was sort of the time where I was sort of not walking away from the Lord, but I was sort of in between. I wasn't really with Him. Wasn't really. I guess I was sort of in a way. I wasn't making Him my focus, my priority, and I was prioritizing everything that I could see and the, I guess, the fleshly desires that come with that. And it was during that time that sort of, I think I was about 20 at the time, so I would have been probably second or third year in university, and I don't really know what it was, and I know that it was just the Lord working in my heart, because I think I literally just woke up one day and I just had this thought, and I thought, you know what, I don't know if I really want to, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do with my university. I was studying business in university, and I wasn't loving it, wasn't hating it. It was just kind of, it was just another day every day, and I thought, well, I'm not really sure where I want this to go, and then it just popped into my mind. I thought, well, you could go to Bible school, because there's some, I knew you, Uncle Kelly, you were always, whenever you guys were around, you'd mention it, and it always sounded like it was a really good experience for kids, especially just after high school. Is a really good foundational experience to learn more about the Lord and to, and I think that was probably in the back of my mind, but I just woke up and I just thought, this is, I don't know why, but I feel like this is what I need to do. And from that day, I just sort of started, it just sort of clicked in my head that this is the thing, this is the next thing that I need to be doing. And I was in the middle of my degree. I didn't really think that it was a very practical time, but I talked to my parents about it, and they were really supportive, and they thought, they said, it's kind of, I think they even said it sort of seems like a strange time to go, but this is a really good thing to do. So, this is something that you should really consider. And I think it was only 2 or 3 months before the next school year. So I think it was maybe in June already. So I thought, man, I should really go check and see if there's even any room left. That'd probably be the first thing, to see if I can still apply. But I did. I applied, and fortunately, I think it was within a week or two, I got a letter in response saying that I'd been accepted, and I was really, really thankful for that. As a slight backstory, I was considering other centers as well, but it sort of came back to what was the intention of what is the intention of putting this year aside and learning about the Lord. Well, for me, I really wanted it to be about what, I guess, the teaching and the foundational aspect of, learning about the Bible and learning more in depth of what it is to be a Christian, and why do we believe all the things that we believe. And from everything that I'd heard from you and from a couple of other people as well, it sounded like His Hill was probably just the right place to go.
Okay. Okay, and what year was it that you guys came?
We came in 2019 to 2020.
Of course, yeah. 1920, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I forgot that year.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how you ended up there. I remember we met you guys because we weren't living there anymore. We were in Louisiana, and it was those years that we had moved away before we came back to Texas. And so we met the whole family, the whole Loewen family, and we had an Airbnb for the week. Really nice place to stay with a swimming pool in the back, and we had a good time there. And,
that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And you went from that right into Bible school. Yeah. So
it was a nice precursor.
It was. It was a good time together as a family. Yeah. Okay. Now there was somebody that was also at Bible school that year. So Yuané, how did you end up coming to Bible school?
Well, it was through the EPS. The camp that we went to, I absolutely loved it. And Dale said, oh, well, this is pretty much just like Bible school, just a week, a little taster of Bible school. And I thought, well, I'd like to do that.
Dale's very subtle about how you... Anybody that knows Dale knows that was a joke. Great guy.
Yeah. So we started the application. I was actually still quite young. I was 17 when I applied, or I was 16 when I applied, but turning 17, because I actually started homeschooling for my last 2 years of high school so that I could finish it.
Last 3 years, so you finished it in 2,
last
right?
3 years, so I could finish in 2, so that I could go to the Hill when Dale's daughter, Isabel, was going.
Okay, I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. So we traveled together.
I just assumed you were the same age, but you're not.
I was working really hard to it's long hours trying to finish that school. But yeah, so we started applying, and it was quite a time crunch actually to get it done, and we didn't know if we'd get the visas because visas is a little trickier to get into the States. But yeah, we ended up getting it, and I had to fly up to Auckland to go get my visa and the interview and everything. But yeah, all went well.
That for people to understand, that's a big deal because for so many people in countries, you just get in a car and you drive to the nearest city.
Yeah.
But really, there's only one large city in New Zealand, and New Zealand is basically just 2 islands. You're on the South Island, where Lord of the Rings was filmed. Yeah.
Right,
and so you had to. So the best way is to fly all the way to Auckland. Yeah, so that's quite a trek just to get the visa.
Oh yeah, it would be like a 3-day drive if you drove it. So,
okay.
So we had to get that visa, and then things were good to go, and we were able to make it into the States. And we also stayed a week beforehand with some of Dale and Patty's family friends and people that they had met through the hill, which was
Okay.
yeah, we really enjoyed that.
So what was being in camp was you made it interesting. What was it about camp? What was going on in camp that made going to Bible school seem so appealing that you would want to finish school so quickly to get there?
Yeah, well, I think just having peers that are seeking the Lord. I'd never had that. I never had other Christian friends, and that was the first time that I'd seen people my age being a Christian, basically. And that was, I thought, I didn't know this was possible.
Wow.
I want that. I thought you had to be an adult to have other Christian friends, I guess. But yeah, I really enjoyed the community, and I love people, and so I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I wanted to learn. I was even I was scared to read my Bible with like my own thoughts. I wanted to make sure that when I was reading it, it was I don't know, from, how do I word that, like
through the lens of somebody who has an understanding. Like, he didn't want to misinterpret
yes,
things,
yeah,
right?
I was
like,
really scared of misinterpreting the Bible, because I know a lot of people that have, and I have seen the hurt that comes from misinterpreting the Bible, and I didn't want to do that. I had some experiences growing up where I thought that, if you have to keep, like, if you do something wrong, you have to commit, like, pray again, like, to be committed, what's the word? Saved.
Recommit yourself
to the Lord. So I would every
to make
night
sure
pray.
that you stay saved.
Yeah. Because every night I would, pray for my family, for their protection. I thought, if I don't pray, they're not going to be protected, because I have to, and otherwise, yeah. And so every time I would do something that was bad, I would freak out and think I'm not saved anymore, so I'd pray it again.
So a very unsecure understanding of Christianity.
Yeah, and I think that comes from, like, that's not what my parents believed. They knew the truth, but I had heard that from some other people.
Yeah.
And that's what really shook me, and I didn't want that. Once I realized that wasn't true, I didn't want to keep learning something that wasn't the truth, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have to deal with that, because that's natural to our flesh. It's just so it's such a battle for us to understand that there's nothing good in me. And so, whether that, and Paul said that after he was a believer, so, we, for some reason we think, I become a believer, okay, now, I have to try. I have to try harder, and I have to remember, and I have to do. And if I think of it like this, if your flesh is not good enough before you come to Christ, how is your flesh going to be good enough after you've come to Christ? Yeah. It's not your flesh that made the difference. It's Christ that has made the difference, and it's Christ that sustains. And so as you have received him, so walk in him. So we need to agree with Paul and move that way. Okay, so you come to Bible school. I'm just curious, what was your first impressions of His Hill?
I guess I've got the mic. I don't know, I loved it. It actually made me more think of what I was used to with South Africa. Like, Texas actually made me think of South Africa.
Really?
Yeah, I would only been back one time, so it's very few memories I had, but it felt very homely, and all of the people in Texas were very just welcoming and warm, and I really enjoyed that. I loved that. It felt like you got a big warm hug from everyone, and that it's a little bit different than New Zealand culture sometimes, so I thrived in it. I loved every person I met.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, no, for me it was very similar. I was greeted with the warmth of the sun, and I love the heat. I love the warmth. Of course I come from Abbotsford. For those who don't know, it rains a whole lot in Abbotsford. I think it's one of the rainiest parts of all of Canada, and it's often pretty cold, and it's just pretty miserable for the most part weather-wise. And so when I came to Texas and I was greeted by the 35-degree weather, I think it got up to 40 degrees one day in September.
He's talking about Celsius for you Americans.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Yeah, so that was, I loved that. I mean, there was a lot of sweating that was going on there, but yeah, in terms of the culture too, I mean, that was something that was really Yeah, that was something that I was really just the conversations I had on the first night. I mean, pretty much nobody when you go there the first night, so everyone's kind of nervous and everyone's trying to meet people, and but yeah, everyone that I talked to was just so genuine, and it was you could tell right away that the culture and the community within the Hill was really strong, and it was. Everyone really wanted to be there, and they'd come there for a purpose, and that was that was really impactful for me for the first couple of days. That was sort of my first impression.
Okay, great. Okay, so tell me, guys, what did the Lord do in your life? Separate, we'll get to the together thing in a little bit, but separately, what did the Lord do? What did he? What when you look back on that year? What was the most impactful thing that the Lord did in your heart while you were there?
Well, I think a lot of it probably, I'll try not to, I'll try to keep it mostly separate, but a lot of what the Lord did in my heart was also sort of in relation to my relationship with my now wife, Yuané, was sort of that I'll kind of get to back to that in a little bit, but I think a lot of it started right in the first week, and Kelly, you were going through Genesis that first week, which is, I think it's the great place to start, because that's exactly where the Bible starts, so it's a great place to start, and that really sort of gave all of us a really good foundation. I remember some conversations among the students that first week, and how so many of us had it was a complete just shock to our systems that we didn't know these things before, and they're right there. You don't need to, it's not, you don't have to flip between the pages. It's not hidden, all those truths about of how God designed us and how that affects the way that we're supposed to live now. And it was really encouraging. I think that first week really opened my eyes immediately to that. The way that I had been living before was it was not sustainable, because I was living from my own strength, and that, there's a lot of things you can do on your own strength, but none of it's going to actually be valuable at the end. I mean, you can do a whole lot of things. You can go and do the laundry, and you can go out and go for a run and all this kind of stuff, but you can't do anything that's going to actually result in any eternal value at the end if you're just working on it and you're just, living from your own strength rather than from Him. Right. And I think that's the biggest thing, that it started in the first week, and it just kind of kept building, I guess, as the year went on. And as I started growing in my relationship with my wife, that sort of, there was a little in-between period. I think it was a couple months into the school year that Yuané, my wife, just sort of felt from the Lord that maybe it wasn't something that we should be continuing on in our relationship so early in the school year. We needed to spend some time, I guess, separately. And at the time, the way that she phrased it to me was that we were just going to be friends from now on. And so I thought, I was crushed at that time. And I said, okay.
Arlene and I took him out for lunch, and he was, in a tailspin.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was obvious. Yeah, so the Lord was doing a lot of things in my heart during that time. So I had to sort of bring that into my own personal walk with the Lord during that time, because the Lord really used that. And I look back now, and I'm really thankful for how the Lord was working in Yuané's life at the time, because it was a bit of a shock, but also really challenging to hear that, because I thought, well, this is the girl that I'm going to marry immediately, right? I mean, I met her, and that right when I first saw her, I went to the wrong. We were playing dodgeball in the gym, and we were on separate teams. But I got first night I got hit by the ball so that I could go to the other side of the gym so that I could meet her.
And then everyone told him, Jared, you're on the wrong side.
Apparently, I wasn't supposed to go to that side. So then, after I'd introduced myself, and
so you were smitten over.
Oh yeah.
Over dodgeball.
Yeah. That's how we started, over dodgeball. So, and everyone yelled at me. Apparently, I went to the wrong side, anyways. Even though I got intentionally hit, just so I could go to that side to meet her. But no, it was love at first sight, I guess, for me. But basically from that point on, when Yuané kind of came to me and said that I think we should just be friends now, it took me back, and it made me think, okay, Lord, why am I here? try to use this time as a time where I can really invest myself in the Lord. And I felt quite broken. I remember thinking, I think I even prayed something like, it was before Yuané came to me and said that. I prayed something like that, Lord, I want you to do something in my life. I think I even said something like, break me, Lord. I want you to just really do something. And oh, he did. So, and he did, and it was the right thing at the right time. And I think that was something that really worked in me. And I used those months because we didn't really start talking again till later on in the second semester. So I used those few months, and it really allowed me to ground myself before I take on another person in, as a girlfriend and then fiance and wife. It allowed me to really develop in my own relationship with the Lord, which was really, really valuable for me.
Okay.
So,
Yuané, did you see a development there in his life?
Yeah, very much. And I think that was one of the reasons at the start is I felt like we both needed to grow a little bit more in the Lord, and there was a huge change. It felt like the Jared I knew at the start was completely different from the Jared at the end.
Oh, I would say he's a completely different person than he was before he went to Bible school.
Yeah, that's interesting coming from, you've known him a lot longer actually than I have, so yeah.
From diapers.
Yeah.
No, always a neat guy, but definitely, Jared, a real change.
Yeah.
A change in the person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different there's a different emphasis to your life.
Mm-hmm.
You still have the same interests.
yeah.
But it's more than maturity. There's a purpose. That's behind those interests.
Yeah, I think that's even that's the way I sort of felt about it as well. Like it's felt like I actually finally had a purpose to actually be able, like you said, to feel like I was.
Your identity.
Yeah, found your identity. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's right. That's because I think my identity, I was, beforehand, just before coming to the Hill, I was sort of searching for that identity, but I was searching in the wrong place. And I was searching in everything that the world can give me, and I was looking and looking and looking, and I just couldn't find something that actually was gripping me, and something that actually
Satisfied.
something that actually satisfied. And certainly, after coming to the Hill, that was something that I really came to understand, that Christ he's not just a little part of my life that, that can help me along the way, and can, and he does, but he's much more than that. And he's the substance of my life. He is my life.
Right.
That's who he is. As Paul says in Philippians. So
yeah, amen. So Yuané, what did the Lord do in your heart? What was a big, you look back on it and say, yeah, this is what he did.
It probably also had a lot to do with Jared, but I think what you said at the start is that you can read your Bible simply. You can just take whatever you read, you can take it literally. And I really appreciated that. It was like every week that we had, a teacher would come through and teach, and I would just absorb it. Like it would be just immediate, oh wow, it's so clear. I didn't need to overthink this. It's just the Bible says it. The verse literally says it right there. And I really appreciated that too, and just getting to make Christ's life my own. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I learned, that it can be my own relationship, and I really enjoyed that. And then also, when Jared and I started dating, that was really tricky, or not dating, but
we were getting to know each other.
Yeah, when we were getting to know each other.
Of school year.
Yeah, that was difficult for me to know, is this okay? Because for some reason in my head, everyone joked about, bridal school, and I thought, no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to go to the Hill, I'm going to learn. I don't need to get married for a long time. And my mum, she joked, she thought I'd never get married because I was just always so particular. And then funnily enough, we went to the Hill, and 2 days in, Jared and I got along pretty well. And
until you didn't.
Until we didn't.
Before you did.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, I actually, right after I told Jared I think we should be friends, I told him, but I still like you. So he...
Just to make matters a little more confusing for a guy, trying to read between all the lines, man, talk about confusing.
But he did, he only, I guess the Lord let him hear what he needed to hear. He could have heard one of the two, and he heard what he needed to hear. But yeah, then that was hard for me to, for some reason I just thought, oh, the responsible thing is to not, go after the first guy I meet. And I thought I shouldn't do that. That's not the good responsible thing to do. And then after a while, a couple of times we had talked, and then eventually, Jared had a conversation with me where he basically told me, you need to decide, either I need to move on or...
You're talking in the second semester.
Yeah, in second semester, yeah. Sorry, skipping ahead a little bit, but that's when I realized, I don't have to say no. I just for some reason always thought it had to be no, and then I realized it doesn't have to be. And I had struggled the entire year with that. That was very difficult for me to, I guess, trust that the Lord can give you something good, because I was always fearful that he just, wouldn't.
He only lets trials come in. He doesn't actually give good
Yeah.
gifts. He only gives bad gifts.
Yeah, he only lets you go through difficult things to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand perfectly. Arlene and I started dating as students. And after Bible school, I was going to go to Bible college. And I found out there was a Bible college here in Abbotsford. And I went through a long time of, okay, why do I want to do this? Is this what the Lord's doing? Or do I just want to go because this is convenient, because it would be wonderful to be in the same town with Arlene? Sonny Westbrook was the director at the time, and he was counseling me through this, which means he wasn't telling me at all what to do. It's just, he just kept pointing me to Jesus. Keep trusting him. What's the Lord doing in your heart, Kelly? And I remember walking out of my dorm to go to my next counseling session, and just realizing as I walked out the door is that, why do I always think that the Lord's will is the most difficult, the hardest? Sometimes the Lord actually is wanting you to do what it is you want to do. And it's because it's because that's what he has for you, that you want that. I think that's what's going on. The Lord's working in your heart. And so that's interesting, because I can remember you as a student. You were the youngest one in the student body, right?
Yes.
But you were the most serious.
Oh.
I remember that. And sometimes we can see that and not, but what's going on is that you were afraid. Yeah, that dealing with that, I don't want to make a mistake.
Yes.
That thing. Yeah. So the Lord had to work through that. Yeah. That's really neat.
He still works through it. Daily that I have to do that is, coming to him for that. But
Okay. All right. So then your worlds were rocked. Okay. It was 2020, and you guys were on spring break. So this was in early April, right? Or mid-April?
Mid-March, I think.
Oh, it was already March. Okay, it was March. Okay. Yeah. And you guys were on the same spring trip. You were taking part of the temple tours that the school offers. And the announcement, came to you that you're cutting the trip short. You have to go back to His Hill. One thing led to another, and everybody had to go home.
Yeah.
Because of course everybody knows what I'm talking about. It was COVID time.
Yeah.
And how did that affect you guys?
Yeah, it was a shock. I think the day that we were told that we were going home from temple tours, we were sort of all in denial, like, oh yeah, this will just blow over. We'll just go back to the hill. It'll blow over. We'll continue on with school year. We'll go to summer camp, and it's all going to be great.
Very quickly.
Yeah, it changed really quick. I think within a couple of days we were told that we were all going to have to go home. Yeah. We thought it was only going to have to be a few people, like whoever sort of wanted to at the beginning, but then it, within a day or two, everyone was basically told that by the end of the week you all got to find flights and get home. So that was
Charlie didn't want to do that, but
no,
that was
no.
Yeah, very much. Charlie did not want to do it. No, but there was enough parents that wanted it.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like, okay, we're pushing water uphill here.
Yeah. So that was, part of that is actually, the conversation that Yuané was alluding to earlier about the conversation when I told her I think you just need to decide. That was sort of that was maybe partly my impatience, but also partly maybe the Lord prompting me to say, okay. That was in, I think, mid-February, so that was probably 4 weeks before we all got sent home. And during that time, after Yuané told me, yes, I'd like to date you, I'd like to pursue this relationship with you, and we spent some really good time together over the next few weeks, just really chatting through, before we committed to a long-term relationship, that we chatted through some things that were really important individually to us.
We're very much planners. We like to we made a big long list and chatted through every important topic of what is non-negotiables and what's important to us. And,
right.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that it was really neat to see how the Lord used that time, even though we thought the school year was going to go on till the end of May or whenever it finishes. It turns out that wasn't going to be the case. And so when we all got sent home, Yuané had to head back to New Zealand and I had to go back to Canada. We ended up in a long distance relationship all of a sudden that we weren't really prepared for. But at the same time, the Lord was prepared for that because he saw it coming from a mile away. Well, more than a mile away, but hey, but he was already preparing us in advance for that. And we didn't know. Yeah. No, we didn't know that, but he really laid a really good foundation of him being at the center of our relationship, which I think it really kept us, it kept our spirits up while we were in long distance, and we weren't sure if we were ever going to see each other again, because we didn't really know the nature of what was happening at the time. So it was about 9 months that we were doing
long
FaceTime.
distance.
A lot of FaceTime.
Yeah.
I think we FaceTimed every single day. So that was
I'm sure.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. But it was good. It was a very, very difficult time after COVID because I went home and there was nobody. Like, it was just...
New Zealand was in
New Zealand was full lockdown.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody for a really, really long time. It was just me and my family.
Months.
And months. I had come from being in this dense, supportive community. Christian fellowship community, to all of a sudden it just being me. And that was very, very difficult. I had a really hard time with that. Then we, after several months of doing long distance, eventually there came a really short opportunity for me to enter Canada. It was like a
critical purpose.
Yeah, critical purpose visa.
Really? What was the critical purpose?
Relationship.
I'm falling apart here.
I guess. Yeah.
So okay, how long has it been since you've been together to this point?
Well, I guess we started dating. It would have been in I guess February 2020. So then that was it's been 5 and a bit years since we started dating, and we've been married for 4.5, which we can get to in a minute if you want to go there now.
So
you came to visit.
Yes, we came to visit. But the funny thing is, the whole way through dating Jared, my parents were actually, they could see from the beginning. The first week, I would send videos, and I would always talk about, we had some mutual friends and things, but whenever I would talk about another guy, it was Jared's friend. It wasn't my friend. Jared, so Jared and I were friends.
Jared. Yeah.
Even though I tried not to, I'd list the names, and then I'd be, oh, and Jared. Not a big deal. But my parents saw straight through it. And my mum would always encourage me, and she'd ask, how's Jared doing? Because she knows my personality.
That's funny.
And the funny thing is, my dad has always been, a very protective dad. And then the funny thing is, when I went to Canada for that short trip, that visa, my dad sent a wedding ring with me.
Really?
Because I guess the Lord had been working in his heart so strongly that he felt this is what needs to happen. Which, what dad, what a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But and my dad hadn't actually met Jared at that point. We'd FaceTimed. He had talked to you. But that was something that he felt this needed to happen. Jared didn't even know. Jared was thinking 4 years later we were going to get married. And
so Jared didn't know that he was about to ask you to marry him.
No.
But you knew he was about to get married.
No, I didn't. My dad knew.
Just your dad?
Yeah. My dad knew what was going on.
Okay. So you came here to visit.
Yes, yeah. So we came, I came over and I had the ring, and we'd been hinting to Jared, hey, things in the world aren't looking aren't looking so good, and eventually Jared's like, okay, maybe in 3 years, right? And then slowly, bit by bit, and I think
before we had actually right before you and I came to visit, I think we had decided, okay, maybe, if things are not looking so good, maybe within 2 years we could get married. And then she told me that her dad was sending a ring along with her, and I thought, well, we're not going to use that, so it's like, don't worry about that.
He sent it just in case, and I was actually it was actually a very sad goodbye, because my parents didn't know if they were going to see me again.
Wow.
Because they said goodbye knowing that things in the world are very volatile, and they didn't know, was I going to get stuck here, what was going to happen. And so funnily enough, we got here, and 3 months later we were married.
Well, I can see that. Jared, is you're very compartmental thinking, very very logically thinking, and so I guess the Lord's really had to do a lot of work in your life over these last few years with all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
because none of this has gone away way you've planned.
Oh
it.
no. Yeah, it's in fact, I think often when we try to plan it, it's almost like the Lord would kind of laugh a little and say, "Well, we're just going to do the opposite thing, just so you can learn to be flexible a little bit."
Okay, Jared, what are we not going to do this time?
Yeah, basically. So that was I had really wanted to finish the degree that I had started before coming to the Hill. I'd wanted to finish that after the Hill, and I thought, okay, once I finish my degree, then I can get a good job and I can provide for a family, and then we can get married, then we'll be ready. But the Lord decided that we were ready a little before that, maybe about 4 years earlier than I thought we were going to be ready.
Okay.
So
and your wedding was beautiful. We all got to attend by internet, but I mean, the things that were put together so quickly, and of course it was an extremely limited number of people that were actually there with you.
Yeah.
But it was being videoed, and we could all be there with you, seeing it and celebrating, and Arlene crying and all this stuff. And of course, I didn't cry, but and I remember Grandma was in a car outside in the parking lot, so she could see you come out. Those kind of things. But it was still a really special thing. Because it's what the Lord was doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And in his timing, he knew a lot of girls, plan their wedding, and the Lord knew exactly what our wedding was going to be like, and we were very thankful for it, actually. And even though it was, I think, when did we get engaged?
We got engaged 5 days before we got married, so we had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
As a little bit of a backstory, just for context, I guess the reason that we ended up deciding to get married so quickly, or what the Lord put on our heart for the reason for why we ended up getting married a lot faster than we were anticipating, was Yuané's Canadian visa was running out. The visa that she had been granted, it was only a shorter visa. It was a 3-month visa. And so towards the end of the trip, it was about a month before she was supposed to leave, we thought, well, maybe it'd be good just to see, because we thought that maybe I would be able to go back with Yuané.
To New Zealand.
And then, or maybe I think we were thinking when your visa ran out, we were going to
both go back to New Zealand for
and then
a bit.
I'd be able to finally meet her parents before we get married, and then maybe we'd even get married in New Zealand or something like that. But we talked to a lawyer, so we thought, well, we'd just be safe, just to make sure, an immigration lawyer who kind of knows a little bit more what's going on. And they said that, if you don't want to get separated, you should probably get married. Otherwise, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to end up getting separated at the border, and they're going to send me back to Canada, and they're going to force Yuané into New Zealand. And then there's a chance that you may never see each other ever again.
Because at the time, things were all over the place, and no one knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, a little bit of context. That was about 3 weeks before we ended up actually getting married, so we had to plan a wedding in 3 weeks, which turns out it's not that hard when there's only 10 people at the wedding. So
it was really easy. Jared and I just showed up pretty much. Your family did all of the heavy lifting pretty much.
Exactly.
So it was Jared's family. Yours obviously could not be there.
That's right.
So they had to be part of the crowd that's watching online, and I felt for them so much with that.
Yeah, that was difficult.
But I really thought, I just was taken back by your parents and their support and insistence on all of this. It was really a very loving thing to watch and to understand that, okay, these are the ones. It was no doubt in anybody's mind that watched this wedding that it was your parents who were giving this woman to be married to this man, because it was just such a strong presence, even though they weren't in the building. So it was just neat to see what the Lord had done. Okay, now you're married, and now you got to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you don't need to give the details or anything, but just let everybody know what's going on now. What are you guys doing?
In New Zealand?
Yes.
Yeah, New Zealand. Well, we right after we got married, I still needed a visa to get into New Zealand, so that was the first thing we needed to do. I got granted a visa 3 days before Yuané's visa expired, before she had her flights booked, and we were on pins and needles because we thought if they didn't give me that visa, she's gonna have to go back, and we're gonna have to try to figure something out. Maybe I'll have to fly separately, or we just weren't sure how that would work because the whole reason was so that we could travel together, so that they'd let me in. Anyways, without getting into too much detail there, got the visa, praise the Lord that 3 days before we had to leave, we did that, had to go do 2 weeks of quarantine in a hotel in New Zealand
Together,
Yes.
which was another reason why we needed to get married.
Yeah.
So,
I guess so.
so that had to happen. So we did that. It all just, the timing was just, we look back and I think we just see the Lord's hand in every step of the way, and all those visas that we needed to get, putting the wedding together, getting that last visa just in time before we had to fly, and then doing the quarantine, and then once we were out, I got to finally meet Yuané's parents after I had married their daughter. That was talk about intimidating, meeting your wife's dad after you've already married her.
Yeah.
And so that, you can't get rid of me now, even if you're disappointed in me. So yeah, that was that was really good.
But then Jared had actually ended up working for my dad on the dairy farm, which he knew nothing about.
Okay.
Not much of a farmer.
No.
Yeah.
And he was thrown in the deep end, and I think that kind of was very growing for him, having to learn so many new things, not just a whole new country and new culture, but a new job that he knew nothing about. I think the Lord worked a lot in him that first year, and we were living with my parents in their house that first bit. And then we ended up moving about 6 months later to an orchard in the South Island, which we're living now.
It's just about 4 hours further south than we already were in the South Island, so a little bit more towards the bottom of the South Island. Yeah.
So that's where we've been now, and we've got a little family business with a cafe, and Jared, my mum cooks in the cafe, and Jared runs the orchard, and my dad does pretty much everything else, everything in between that needs to be done. And my sister-in-law also works in the cafe with us, and my brother and my sister-in-law live on the property with me and Jared and my parents. We've got three separate little dwellings there, which is really nice. So that's what we've been.
And then there's been a big change to your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So we ended up getting pregnant with our little girl, about Sadie, about a year ago.
Yeah, she's
9 months now. Yeah. That was a very big change. We were ready. We were ready to have kids, and we were pretty excited when we ended up getting pregnant. But yeah, definitely still a surprise, and the Lord kind of worked in our hearts. It was a bit of a shock.
I think it was one of those things where we weren't. I think we both wanted a family. We weren't sure when that was going to be, but
it still didn't fit in your compartmentalization.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I wanted it to be in the exact time. It had to be in the exact time that I was ready for it, even though nothing else had been. But apparently, I still had decided that it still needed to be. So, but when it came, I think we looked back later and we thought, well, even just looking over the past year, how the Lord had started to reveal things to us and started to, I guess, get us on the mindset of thinking, okay, this is
okay.
This is okay. If this was to happen, this would be actually a really good thing. Mm-hmm. Like, and it would be, imagine how much the Lord can use that. And I think in the time that we've had her now 9 months, it's Sadie is her name. It's been really growing and obviously stretching at the same time, because there's so many things you need to learn that you just haven't experienced before, and you can only be so prepared. And I think it's really, and I think Yuané, you'd especially say that it's something that's really, it's forced us to put our will aside, and it forced us to really, I don't know if you have something.
Yeah, well, it actually started when we were pregnant and getting ready for the birth. It's a scary thing to think about. But we knew we had to take it one step at a time and trust that the Lord will lead us, because we live 2 hours away from the nearest hospital. And we had to trust, okay, the Lord, you'll guide us each step that we need to do. And her birth was a little bit, a lot of things went wrong. And I ended up being helicoptered out to the hospital from the nearest birthing centre. And that was a very scary time. Jared...
Meanwhile, I had to drive like a maniac to try to get to the hospital because they didn't let me on the helicopter.
Yeah.
I had forgotten all this, but as you say, I'm remembering. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very difficult time, and so I had to labour by myself at the hospital. The sweet old man was holding my hand in the helicopter through each contraction. It was just interesting to see how the Lord was leading us in that, and how He was guiding my thoughts so clearly in that time, saying, it's okay, I've got you. You can just...
I
was fine.
You were way more calm than I was.
I was very calm. I was just one step at a time. The Lord's got this. Jared was a little bit more... It's a little more scary seeing your wife in that condition.
Yeah, I was big time flustered.
Yeah, and then it ended up in an emergency C-section where a couple of other things ended up going wrong as well. And I think... Yeah, it was a time of you have to trust the Lord, and it's...
Yeah, there was a time, without going into too much more detail, but there was a time where they gave you an anesthetic or whatever, a numbing thing that they gave. Yeah, they had to do it a third time, but anyway, they ended up they gave her too high of a dose where she couldn't feel anywhere from the neck down, and so she actually was having a lot of trouble breathing. So they thought that there was a chance that they might have to, put her under just to make sure that she doesn't, pass out. And anyway, so there was a lot of little things that were sort of, that it was all over the place. And, obviously I'm just a mess. Yuané hardly has any idea what's going on, but
we haven't slept in 2 days.
Yeah.
Labor was extremely long. It was just... Jared looking at me, that was, I think, a very scary moment for him, realizing that, hey, it's
life. I think it was a shock to me how fragile life could be, even though the doctors, they didn't have any concern that Yuané was going to be gone, and the baby was doing really good. Sadie was doing really good through the whole thing. She was healthy at the end, and her heart rate was really good all the way through, but I think it was just a shock of, and I think
quickly things can turn.
Yeah, and I think, Kelly, you've even mentioned something in one of your recent podcasts, I don't remember which one, but you said something about, if you took away my wife and my children, what would I be left with? And I thought, man, that's a scary thought to think about, but I need to be left with Jesus. There needs to be, that is what needs to be left, and that's the most important thing to be left with. So that was something that was, the Lord was really working that in me, and in a very, in that moment, it was a scary thought, but it was also comforting at the same time, that the Lord, just as He's been with us through all of those visas, through all the little bits and pieces of information that had to go just right, but He was with us through that entire time, and He was faithful through each thing. Even if it didn't go according to my plan, it went exactly according to His plan, and that was really impactful. And it's something I get to take with me now wherever I go now, that I can see that each step of the way that He has been faithful, even though I've been thrown off by not seeing not seeing what He was doing in that moment, because I was just so scared that I wasn't, that something was going to go wrong and something else was going to go wrong and it wasn't going to work, but He was faithful. And that was, it's something that I get to look back on, and just, it's so clear to see Him through all those things.
And even seeing that He gave us the strength we needed through each part. The amount of times, I know that was not my strength, because I was done. There was done, and I went so far beyond it. And every time to think the Lord brought me through it. And then even after we had some complications, healing after the surgery as well. And I was in pain for months and months. And the Lord still somehow, every single day I got up, every day I nursed her, I changed her diaper, or whatever needed to be done. There was no choice in it because it's your child. You're caring for this child. And that's a big thing that I learned, is it's not my will. I want to lie here and sleep. I want to recover.
It's not your will, and it's not your strength either, because
neither.
you didn't have any of those things.
I had no strength.
Wow.
I had no...
Yeah.
Yeah, it was... I couldn't do it myself, which I'm a doer. I like to do things, and I like to do them well. And I couldn't do it well. I was reliant on everyone around me, and that was a hard thing to learn, and I still learn it every day, because nothing we do is our own will, and that's how it should be. That was difficult to learn.
Well, my last question was, what's the Lord been teaching you lately? And I think we ended with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for your time. We need to end it so you can get to Sadie. Grandma's been taking care of her, and it's probably time to get up there. But thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. Thanks for having us and asking us to come.
Thank you for tuning in to the His Hill podcast. You've been listening to our host, Kelly Doherty, and two of our alumni from the 2019-2020 school year, Jared and Yuané Loewen. We hope you appreciated hearing from them today. Remember, as the days unfold and events come up, that we must continue to keep our eyes fixed on Christ. He is our firm foundation, and with Him we can stand secure, no matter what unpredictable or beautiful things come our way. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in with us this week to another episode of the His Hill podcast. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.